23 years, 4 months and 17 days. That was exactly how long I served the Holloway family in this mansion that now lies in complete abandonment. My name is Arthur Penrose. I'm 72 years old, and for more than 2 decades I was the head butler of this property that once housed luxury, power and secrets that should never have come to light. This diary, I kept it hidden for almost 4 decades. Each page is a date, a day, a record of what I witnessed. But I'm not simply going to read it to you. I'm going to relive it. I'm going to tell each moment as if it were happening again, because in a way, for me, it never stopped happening. I managed to gather some photographs over the years, not many. The family didn't like being photographed, and there were reasons for that. But what I managed to save, I'll share with you, so you can see what I saw, feel, even if just a fraction of what I felt. Today I'm going to tell you about my first day, March 15, 1987, the day I crossed those gates and entered a world that shouldn't exist. I was only 39 years old. I thought I had seen everything in my career. I had seen nothing. Before I begin, I need to know something. If you're going to accompany me on this journey, and believe me, it's going to be a long, disturbing journey that will change the way you see the world, subscribe now. Because this is just the first entry of a diary with more than 8,000 records, and each one is more impossible than the last. Turn on notifications. You won't want to miss any chapter of what's to come. Because what happened in that mansion needs to be told, and you need to be here to listen. Let's begin. 6:23 in the morning. I wake up in the boarding house where I spent the previous night. March was cold that year, a damp cold that penetrated the bones. I still remember the smell of that room, old mold mixed with lavender from the sheets. I dressed with all care, black suit, dark grey tie. 15 years of experience taught me that first impressions define everything. I looked at myself in the mirror, brown hair beginning to grey at the temples, angular face marked by time. An ordinary man about to accept an ordinary job, or so I thought. The driver who picked me up, God, I never forgot him. A thin man, middle-aged, with a deep scar crossing his left eyebrow. He didn't introduce himself, just grabbed my suitcase and threw it in the trunk of a black Bentley. The silence during the journey was heavy, uncomfortable. He watched me through the rear-view mirror every few minutes, studying me. And then, out of nowhere, he asked, "How long do you intend to stay?" The question caught me off guard. It was strange. Presumptuous. "I intend to make this my permanent position," I replied, "if the family so desires." He laughed. It wasn't a laugh of humor, it was a laugh of pity, as if I had just told a sad joke. "That's what they all say," he murmured. Those words kept echoing in my head. All of them. How many butlers had passed through there, and why did none of them stay? And then we turned a corner, and there it was, Holloway Mansion. To this day, when I close my eyes, I can see that first vision with crystal clarity. Every detail, every shadow. The access road was flanked by centuries-old oaks, perhaps bicentennial, trunks so thick that 3 men couldn't embrace them. The branches intertwined above the road, forming a tunnel that blocked almost all sunlight. It was like entering a living throat, like being swallowed. I timed it mentally. It took us almost 4 minutes from the wrought iron gate until we spotted the mansion. More than a kilometer of complete isolation from the outside world. And when it appeared before us, the energy I felt at that moment was inexplicable. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something deeper, as if the house were conscious, as if it knew I was arriving, as if it were waiting for me. 3 floors of French limestone, aged to acquire a tone between grey and amber. Massive Corinthian columns flanked the entrance, each at least 8 meters high. The windows were tall, narrow, with stained glass on the sides. But those stained glass windows, my God, those stained glass windows. Even from a distance I could see they weren't common religious images. They were geometric patterns that that seemed to move. I know it sounds impossible, but I swear, when light passed through them, the patterns changed. Circles within circles, lines that intersected at angles my eyes couldn't completely follow. Years later, I discovered what they were, but on that first day, they were just disturbing. And the gargoyles at the four corners of the roof, dark stone gargoyles, not small decorations. They were the size of people, twisted in positions that didn't suggest protection. They suggested agony, eternal suffering captured in stone. The driver noticed my gaze. They came from a cathedral in France, he said, 13th century. The cathedral was demolished because something was buried underneath, something that started to come out. I didn't ask anything more. Part of me didn't want to know. He left me at the main staircase, 12 steps of white marble, and those doors. The double doors were solid mahogany with carvings that still make me uneasy when I think about them. Lions, serpents, and semi-human forms that seemed to be transforming. The handles were bronze hands, clenched human hands. "Good luck, Mr. Penrose," the driver said, and there was something in his tone. It wasn't sarcasm, it was genuine regret. Before I could respond, he was already speeding back down the access road. I was alone before those doors. I took a deep breath, adjusted my tie, and entered. The air changed the instant I crossed the threshold. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Outside, it was March, cold but normal. Inside, it was something else, another temperature, another atmospheric pressure, another reality. The entrance hall had a double-height ceiling, 8, maybe 9 meters, Italian marble floor with black veins that formed patterns, almost deliberate, like roots or veins, depending on the angle. I stood there for, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, just absorbing, trying to process the magnitude of the place. The central staircase divided into 2 curved arms that met on the second floor, marble balustrade with golden details. And the chandeliers, 3 Czech crystal chandeliers, each at least 2 tons, thousands of crystals capturing the light and creating pale rainbows that danced across the walls. But the light entering through the side-stained glass, that light was wrong. Today, decades later, I still remember the sensation. Natural sunlight, when passing through those stained glass windows, acquired a quality, dense, as if it were loaded with something beyond photons, as if each ray carried information, memory, history, and the cold. Outside it was about 8 degrees Celsius, cold, but March in the mountains, normal. Inside it should be warmer, or at least the same temperature, but it was colder, significantly colder. I could see my own breath forming small clouds of vapor. There were no lit fireplaces, no visible heaters. And yet that cold wasn't natural. It wasn't the absence of heat. It was something active, as if the house were draining heat from the air, sucking it. "Mr. Penrose." The voice made me jump, literally. My heart raced. I hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't heard doors. But suddenly she was there, less than 3 meters from me. Mrs. Miriam Walsh, 60 years old, completely white hair tied in an impeccable bun. Angular face with deep wrinkles around the eyes, wrinkles of someone who had frowned for decades of worry. But it was the eyes. God, it was the eyes. Grey, not just grey, the colour of sky before a storm. And when she looked at me, I felt as if I were being dissected, evaluated, weighed on some invisible scale. She wore a black Victorian dress closed up to the neck, and a silver brooch on the collar, a spiral shape that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at it. I extended my hand. "Mrs. Walsh." She looked at my hand for 3 complete seconds, 3 seconds that seemed like an eternity, and then she shook it. Her skin was freezing, not cold, freezing, as if she had just plunged her hand in ice, and firm, without any human warmth. "I've been the housekeeper for 22 years, she said. Her voice was low, controlled with an accent I couldn't identify. British, perhaps, but with something older underneath. I know this house better than I know myself. And then she held my hand, didn't squeeze harder, just didn't let go, and her eyes fixed on mine. How many butlers worked here before me? I asked, trying to seem casual. 11. 11 butlers in 22 years, average of 2 years each. Mathematically, it wasn't alarming, but the way she said that number, the weight she placed on the word, made it seem much more significant. Why did they leave? She finally released my hand. Some retired, some found better opportunities, some simply didn't fit. Fit what? She didn't answer directly. She just said the rhythm of the house, the needs of the family, the nature of certain duties. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had insisted on that question, if I had demanded clarity. But I didn't. I swallowed my curiosity and followed her. She started walking, and I followed, and I noticed something impossible. Her steps made no sound, literally no sound. My leather soles clicked softly on the marble with each step. Hers, nothing, as if she were floating a few millimeters above the floor. Logic told me it must be some kind of special sole, soft rubber, perhaps. But my eyes saw something else. They saw someone who moved against normal laws of weight and gravity. It was the first sign, the first of many, that this house operated under different rules. The tour took almost 4 hours, and today, 38 years later, I still remember every detail. Not because I have good memory. I do, but it's not extraordinary. I remember because those details were engraved, as if the house itself were ensuring I would never forget. The kitchen was industrial, professional stoves, huge ovens, a central marble island. But what struck me most was Margaret Doyle, the head cook, Irish, 45 years old, robust, with graying red hair and hands marked by decades of work with knives and fire. But it was her eyes that disturbed me, eyes of someone who had seen things she shouldn't have seen. "Welcome," she said without smiling, and then, lowering her voice, "Never, never enter the pantry after 8 p.m. It's locked, but if for some reason the door is open, don't enter." "Why?" I asked. She didn't answer, just went back to cutting vegetables with almost violent precision. The sound of the knife on the board echoed through the kitchen like gunshots. Years later, I discovered why she gave me that warning. But on that first day, it was just another mystery, another piece of a puzzle I didn't yet know I was assembling. The library. My God, the library. It occupied the entire east wing of the first floor. Dark mahogany shelves from floor to ceiling. A bronze rolling ladder for access to upper volumes. 8,000 books, Mrs. Walsh said, maybe more. The way everything was different amazes me to this day. They weren't just books, it was accumulated knowledge, it was power. But what really caught my attention was a special section, locked glass doors. Behind them, books bound in black and dark red leather, no visible titles. Some seemed centuries old. "Mr. Holloway's private collection," Mrs. Walsh explained. "No one but the family has access." I approached the glass, and I swear by everything that's sacred, the books seemed to pulse, as if they were breathing, as if they were living organisms bound in leather. And then I noticed something else. The library had no windows, none. Solid walls, covered by shelves, entirely artificial lighting. "Why are there no windows?" I asked. "Mr. Holloway believes sunlight damages books." But that didn't make sense. Libraries have had windows for centuries. There are ways to protect books from direct light. Why completely seal the environment? Years later, I understood it wasn't to keep light out. It was to keep something in. The ballroom was impeccable. Polished wood floor like a mirror, crystal chandeliers, dark red velvet curtains. "When was the last event here?" I asked. Mrs. Walsh stopped walking. For a long moment, she was silent, and then, 1984. "Edward Holloway, The second's funeral. A ball at a funeral. It wasn't a ball. Her tone made it clear there would be no more questions about this subject. But I noticed something. The floor was recently waxed. No dust, no signs of disuse. For a hall supposedly not used for 3 years, it was in perfect condition, as if it were being kept ready. For what? I never forgot that smell. Beeswax mixed with something floral I couldn't identify, and underneath something metallic, like old blood absorbed by the wood. There was a chapel on the second floor, small, 15 pews, a simple marble altar, and an inverted crucifix. It wasn't hung upside down by accident. The entire cross was deliberately inverted, with Christ pointing to the floor. The family has beliefs. Eclectic was all Mrs. Walsh said. The door was supposedly always locked, but I could see, even from outside, deep marks on the inside of the door, scratches, as if someone or something had tried to get out, with nails, with claws. And then I met the Crawford twins, Jenny and Julia, 28 years old. Identical down to the last detail. Same height, same weight, same light brown hair tied in identical buns. But what never left my head was the way they spoke. Simultaneously, not alternating, not finishing each other's sentences, speaking the same words at the same time in the same intonation. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Penrose," they said in perfect unison. It was unnatural, completely unnatural, as if they were a single mind operating 2 bodies. "We work together, always together, never apart," they continued, still in sync. Later, Mrs. Walsh explained to me they were born like that, connected in some way. Medicine doesn't explain. They're not normal, but they're excellent professionals. To this day, I wonder what she meant by connected, and why the family hired them specifically. Finally, we arrived at the central corridor of the second floor. Ahead of us, a narrower staircase of dark wood led up to the third floor. A red velvet rope blocked the passage, and a discreet sign, "Private, prohibited." "The third floor," Mrs. Walsh said, her voice deeper than before, "is absolutely prohibited for staff. No exceptions, no circumstances. Is that understood?" "Yes, but may I ask why?" She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something beyond professional control in her eyes. Fear, genuine, deep, ancient fear. "Because the third floor doesn't belong to us. It belongs to something older than this house, older than this family. And some doors, Mr. Penrose, must remain closed, always." As she spoke, I looked up. The staircase disappeared into darkness, and I swear I saw a shadow moving up there, not caused by light or wind, a shadow that moved on its own, with purpose. And then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, slowly. But when I looked again, there was nothing, just darkness and silence. You know, when I decided to finally tell this story, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. But I see from the comments of people who have watched this far that there are those who understand, who feel there's truth in these words. If you've gotten to this point and are feeling what I felt that day, that mixture of fear and insatiable curiosity, leave a comment. It doesn't need to be anything elaborate. Just tell me where you're watching from. I want to know where in the world these stories are reaching, and if you've lived through something similar, something inexplicable. I'd like to know that too, because the more people know, the safer we'll be. Now, let me tell you about the meeting with the family, because it was at that moment that I understood there was no turning back. 6 p.m., I was led to Victor Holloway's office. In the 23 years that followed, I was in that office hundreds of times. But never was that first impression erased. It's engraved in me. Walls covered in dark brown leather, a mahogany desk that must have weighed half a ton, shelves with books about business, finance, history, and him sitting behind that desk, Victor Holloway, 6'3", broad shoulders under a perfectly cut charcoal grey suit, grey hair combed back without a single hair out of place. But it was the eyes, blue, penetrating, eyes that saw through you, through lies, through intentions, through soul. The energy he emanated was undeniable. It wasn't common charisma, it was something more primordial. When he was present, you knew instinctively, animalistically, that you were in the presence of a predator. "Mr. Penrose," he said without getting up. His voice was deep, echoing slightly. "Sit down." I sat. The chair was slightly lower than his. Classic psychological dominance trick. I knew it, but it worked anyway. He studied me in silence for almost a minute, just observing, evaluating, deciding, and then he pressed a button on his phone. Seconds later, the door opened. Eleanor Holloway entered, and the air changed. 43 years old, porcelain pale skin, black hair to her waist, straight as silk. Brown eyes so dark they seemed to have no pupils. Dark green Victorian dress, silver jewelry, a pendant that caught light in the wrong way, as if light entered but didn't come out completely. "My wife, Eleanor," Victor said. She didn't offer her hand, just inclined her head, and her eyes swept over me from head to toe in 3 seconds. And I felt it. I felt her judgment, her assessment, and curiously, her pity. "Welcome, Mr. Penrose," she said, her voice soft and hypnotic. "I hope your stay here will be enlightening." To this day, I don't know exactly what she meant by that word, but there were layers, hidden meanings, warnings disguised as welcomes. The door opened again. Sebastian entered first, 17 years old, tall but too thin, dark circles as if he hadn't slept in weeks, careless clothes. His eyes were empty, not empty of emotion, empty of life, as if everything that made him human had been slowly drained. "Another one," he whispered when he saw me. "Sebastian," Eleanor reprimanded. He extended a trembling hand. I shook it. It was freezing and sweaty, and I felt his pulse, but it was wrong, beating out of rhythm, as if his heart were out of sync with his own body. And then Isabel entered, 12 years old, curly blonde hair, bright green eyes, simple white dress, angelic appearance. But when she looked at me, I felt something I had never felt before, as if she were reading me, not superficial thoughts, deeper layers, memories, fears, secrets I didn't even know I had. She approached and extended her hand. "Hello, Mr. Penrose. You're different from the others." "Isabel," Victor warned. "But it's true, Daddy. He has strength. The others were weak. That's why they left. But he's going to stay." It wasn't a question. It was absolute certainty. "How do you know?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled, sweet, childlike, but with something ancient behind it. "Because I can see the lines that connect people to places. Yours are intertwined with this house now. You can't leave anymore, even if you want to." Victor dismissed the children abruptly, and then he looked at me. "Mr. Penrose, let's be direct. This is not a common house. My family is not common. The duties you will be asked to perform will not be common. Do you understand?" "No, sir. But I'm willing to learn." He smiled. It wasn't comforting. This house requires 3 qualities: competence, loyalty, and selective blindness. Selective blindness, that phrase again. The ability not to see certain things, not to hear certain sounds, not to ask certain questions. Can you do that? I should have said no, should have left, should have run. But I said, "Yes, sir, I can." "Excellent. Welcome to the Holloway family." I shook his hand. It was freezing, like everyone's in that house. "Have you ever made a decision that completely changed the course of your life? A decision that, looking back, you can't believe you made?" That handshake was mine. It was the moment I sealed my fate. If this story is affecting you, if you feel you need to know what happens next, do something for me. Like this video. Not for me, but so others can find it, so others can know. because knowledge is the only protection we have against what we don't understand. And if you know someone who likes these stories, someone who would understand what I'm telling, share it with that person. Some stories need to be shared. Some truths need to be heard. Now let me tell you about the first night, because that's when I realized there was something very, very wrong in that house. 10:47 p.m. I'm in my suite above the garages. From the window I see the main mansion. All the staff left hours ago. Only I remain. Only me and the family. All the lights on the first and second floors are off. But the third floor is completely lit, every window glowing with pale yellowish light. And through the curtains I see silhouettes. I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, the family, but I keep counting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 different silhouettes moving in some kind of circular pattern. But how? The family is only 4 people. The staff left. I didn't see cars arriving. Where did these people come from? And then I hear it, faint, crossing the space, chanting, voices in harmony, but it's not music. They're tones that shouldn't be possible for human throats, too low, too high, overlapping in ways that make my ears physically hurt. It lasts 15 minutes. Then, silence. The third floor, lights go out, all at once, complete darkness. I close my curtains, lock my door, check twice, and I write in my diary. I won't read it. I still remember every word. I accepted this job in search of stability, salary, comfortable retirement. But in a single day, I saw and heard things that defy explanation. This family hides secrets. This house keeps mysteries. And I, against all instinct, need to know. I'm staying, and I stayed for 23 years, and I discovered secrets no man should know. But that was just the first day. In the next episode, I'll tell you about March 16th, 1987, my second day, the day I found the first bloodstain in the corridor. The day Mrs. Walsh showed me the book, and the day I began to understand that I wasn't working for a family. I was working for a curse. If you've made it this far, you need to see the next episode. You need to know what happened. Subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications, because what I'm going to reveal in the next video will change everything you just heard. And when you discover what was written in that book, you'll understand why I should never have stayed, why none of us should have.